Hopefully Cube the next Friday. Y'all make sure Cube put Pinky in the next Friday he's doing.
Hollywood always hides secrets that the spotlight never reveals. Hollywood has always harbored secrets that the spotlight never reveals, and the story of Clifton Powell is living proof. Once hailed as a talented supporting actor with over 100 roles, it was his portrayal of Pinky in Next Friday that truly turned him into a cultural icon. More than 2 decades later now, at the age of 64, Powell unexpectedly broke his silence, revealing behind-the-scenes truths, from how the role almost went to someone else to the bitter barriers of skin color and the shocking turns within the very industry that sustained him. These revelations have not only shaken fans, but also exposed the dark side of Hollywood. So what is the darkest secret Powell has kept hidden for decades? Join us in uncovering it in this video. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out. The unexpected journey of Clifton Powell. To truly understand the dark secrets behind Next Friday, we must go back to where it all began. Because behind the outrageous face of Pinky, the one that always makes audiences laugh upon rewatching, lies a stormy childhood in Washington, D.C. A career that spanned hundreds of roles and a series of turning points that show Hollywood was never the promised land it seemed to be. Clifton Powell was born in 1956 in southeast Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood surrounded by hardship. There he was exposed early on to poverty injustice and street violence. Powell once shared that wandering the streets at night, hearing arguments or witnessing rage erupt in broken families, left a deep imprint on his memory and later became valuable material for his acting. He wasn't a privileged child, nor was he born into an artistic family. On the contrary, becoming an actor for the young Powell was nothing short of a distant dream. But it was precisely the urge to break free that pushed him to find his own path. That path became clearer when Powell enrolled at Emerson College in Boston, a school with a strong tradition in performing arts. It was there that Powell honed his skills from voice movement to the art of breathing life into a character. After graduating from Emerson, he officially entered the acting profession in the late 1980s, at a time when Hollywood was just beginning to open doors to more black talent while still riddled with hidden biases. Over more than 4 decades, Powell appeared in over 250 film and television projects, a number that made him a familiar face, even if he was rarely the leading man. He featured in major films like Menace II Society, 1993, Dead Presidents, 1995, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, 1998, and most notably Ray 2004, where he played Jeff Brown, the manager of the legendary Ray Charles. The film earned Jamie Foxx an Oscar, and Powell, though not in a leading role, was also recognized for his solid and emotionally rich performance. In 2002, Clifton Powell won Best Lead Actor at the American Black Film Festival for his role in Civil Brand. It was one of the rare milestones where mainstream Hollywood had to acknowledge his talent, a persistent, hardworking supporting actor who brought intense energy to every character he portrayed. However, Powell's career is not just a long list of films and awards. It's also the story of how a black man had to constantly fight to survive in an industry that was never fair. He once recounted losing a role in a film about Ruby Bridges, a symbol of anti-racism, because the producer said he was too dark to the point of frightening the audience. Ironically, Powell himself is living proof that even exceptional talent can be sidelined simply because of skin color. He was also rejected from a McDonald's commercial for the same reason. These bitter memories didn't just anger him. They fueled the intensity behind his villainous roles, helping audiences believe that those cold stares on screen were real. The name Clifton Powell became associated with a certain type of character, aggressive, dangerous, violent men. From pimps to corrupt cops, from abusive ex-lovers to hardened criminals, Powell portrayed them all with rare intensity. In fact, audiences often confused Powell in real life with the roles he played. When a woman accused him of sexual assault in 2013 and sought $75,000 in damages, the case remained in civil court and never led to a criminal conviction. Powell firmly denied the allegation, calling it an extortion attempt. Yet for the public, the story became even more tangled because it fit the villainous image he had portrayed so many times. His reputation was thus tainted, despite no concrete evidence of wrongdoing. Still, the turning point that truly brought Clifton Powell closer to audiences wasn't those intense villain roles, it was the comedic character Pinky in Next Friday 2000, a role both spontaneous and fateful, which will be discussed in detail in the next section. Through Pinky, audiences saw a completely different Clifton Powell, funny, exaggerated, and unforgettable. And more importantly, They saw proof that sometimes success comes when you dare to break free from the mold Hollywood tries to trap you in. Pinky, a fateful turn and the resounding success of Next Friday. The story began with a coincidence. Steve Fryer, a close friend of Powell's since high school, was working behind the scenes on a music video for Ice Cube at the time. During a conversation, Cube suddenly asked, "Who's that guy who played Cutter Fryer?" Replied that it was Clifton Powell. That seemingly offhand question sparked the connection. The next day, Powell got a call from his ex-wife. "That Ice guy called you." He laughed. "You mean Ice Cube not realizing that the call would open the door to one of the most important opportunities of his career?" Originally, the role of Pinky was intended for a white actor. When Powell came in for the audition, things didn't go smoothly. He had a cold, and the audition scene inside the record store dragged on for 40 minutes without finding the spark. But then, drawing on a memory from the film The Breaks where he danced while holding a gun, Powell suddenly exploded with energy. He pointed the fake gun, bounced around, and shouted, "I'll blow your damn head off." Cube was stunned. "What did you just do that again exactly like that?" And just like that, Pinky was born not from scripted dialogue, but from spontaneous improvisation. The character of Pinky was a blend of many elements. A high-pitched voice laced with arrogance, exaggerated spins and dance moves, and wide, bug-eyed expressions while holding a gun. All of it created a character that left audiences both frightened and rolling with laughter. In the trailer, the scene where Pinky frantically shouts, "I'll shoot you or you," before accidentally turning the gun on himself became iconic. Even when filming Friday After Next 2002, Ice Cube burst out laughing the moment Powell walked in. "Cliff, you gotta dance, my man," Powell asked. Again, Cube replied, "Absolutely. That's Pinky." What's remarkable is that Pinky quickly transcended the role of a mere side character. To audiences, Pinky became a pop culture icon. Many no longer called Powell by his real name, but simply Pinky, or even misremembered it as Panky during encounters in Mississippi. A Native American fan once recognized him at a casino and shouted, "You're the pinky finger guy, right a pun on the word pinky." These laugh-out-loud moments proved just how deeply Pinky had etched himself into viewers' memories. Pinky's success also went hand-in-hand with the commercial triumph of Next Friday. Released in 2000 as a sequel to Friday 1995, the film grossed over $59 million at the box office, nearly 6 times its production budget. That figure made Next Friday one of the top-grossing comedies of the year, and paved the way for a third installment, Friday After Next. In that overall success, Pinky was an essential ingredient injecting wild humor into the already unpredictable world of Ice Cube and Mike Epps. For Powell, Pinky marked a special turning point. After hundreds of villain roles that inspired fear, it was the first time he became the reason an entire theater erupted in laughter. His versatility, fiery and absurd in Next Friday, forced critics to acknowledge that Clifton Powell was more than just the go-to villain Hollywood often cast him as. He could be anyone as long as the role was challenging enough. However, this very success came with a paradox. Pinky became so iconic that it sometimes overshadowed Powell's other accomplishments. In the eyes of many, he remains Pinky despite having appeared in over 250 projects and having won major awards. But Powell never complained. In numerous interviews, he's expressed gratitude that Pinky allowed him to enter pop culture and become a household name across generations. He even joked, "In my 46-year career, I've had some wild moments, but Pinky is the best thing that's ever happened because that character broke through every barrier." What's more, Pinky became a bridge between Powell and the African-American fan community. With his exaggerated comedic style, the character evoked the tradition of street comedy. He stood as proof that even within a discriminatory system, a black actor could still create his own icon and assert an irreplaceable presence. The success of Pinky and Next Friday not only brought Clifton Powell closer to the public, but also opened the door to another journey, a journey into the hidden corners few have ever known. Because behind the uproarious laughter and those seemingly harmless improvised scenes lies a far more complex world, unexpected casting choices, bitter barriers rooted in skin color legal controversies that rocked his reputation, and even behind-the-scenes accidents that haunted those involved. It was only when the spotlight faded that Clifton Powell began to tell it all the dark secrets that for many years the audience had never been allowed to see. When skin color becomes a barrier in one's own industry. If Pinky is an example of how an unexpected role turned Clifton Powell into a cultural icon, then the bitter experiences throughout his career reveal a harsh opposite truth His skin color once stood as an invisible wall, repeatedly shutting down opportunities right before his eyes. And Powell himself has spoken openly about these stories as living proof of the prejudice that has endured in Hollywood for decades. He once recalled an important role in a television film about Ruby Bridges, the first black child to attend a white school in the American South. The script carried deep historical weight and was expected to make an impact. Powell was initially the top choice. But then the producer bluntly told director Usain Pauly that Powell was too dark, so dark it might scare the audience. Just one comment, and the entire opportunity vanished. For Powell, the blow wasn't just losing a role, it was a scar, a painful reminder that even when Hollywood talks about diversity, it can still uphold colorism in the cruelest ways. What made the situation even more bitter was the reaction of a French white producer involved in the project. He told Powell directly, "Mr. Powell, you were our first choice. If you didn't get the part, it's not because we didn't fight for you." In other words, the issue wasn't his talent, it was his skin tone. It was a direct hit to Powell's belief that acting skill could overcome all prejudice. The discrimination wasn't limited to film. Powell encountered it even in commercial auditions. During a McDonald's campaign, a friend of his who worked as a producer on the team wanted Powell to be part of it. But the advertising agency immediately shut it down, claiming he was too dark. In an industry where advertising is supposed to represent the American family, Powell being dismissed solely for his skin color revealed just how coldly that discrimination had been institutionalized. Powell never kept these stories to himself. He often shared them at workshops, citing not just his own experience, but those of his peers. He once quoted an old article, possibly from Esquire, about white Hollywood and black Hollywood, in which Wesley Snipes recounted how his white agent at CAA once received feedback from casting, "Don't send anyone darker than Denzel Washington." For Powell, that didn't sound shocking, because he had lived those rejections firsthand. He went even further, drawing comparisons to American politics. If Obama's skin tone were like mine, Powell asserted he wouldn't have become president. This wasn't just talk, it was a conclusion drawn from decades of observation and personal experience. Even in everyday life, Powell said he could feel the weight of racial bias. Once, while flying first class, a man behind him kept kicking his seat. When Powell stood up and asked, "If I were a white man, would you still be doing this?" the question wasn't just for that man, but for a society that had repeatedly made him feel diminished. On set, things could get even worse. Powell remembered filming a TV show where the sound technician insisted on running a microphone wire through his hair while he was wearing a Tupac-style head wrap for a gangster role. Powell declined, explaining that the next scene involved rolling on the ground, but the technician brushed him off. When Powell insisted again, the man looked him straight in the eyes and said challengingly, "What did I just say to you?" Powell stepped back and replied coldly, "I will beat your ass right here on this set, and anyone else here who has a problem with me being a black man, step up. I'm ready." It wasn't a hot-headed reaction. It was a declaration Powell would rather lose the job than silently accept humiliation. In fact, he walked off the set that day telling his manager he was willing to pay for his own return flight and hotel. It was only after the producer called to apologize and arranged to meet SAG standards that he returned. But for the rest of that shoot, not a single crew member spoke to him. Powell knew the price of standing tall was isolation. The story turned even darker when he recalled a tragedy on the set of Vampire in Brooklyn. A black female stunt performer was doing a high-risk jump. The first time was successful, and her family cheered. But on the second attempt, someone had adjusted the landing pad. She slammed into the wall and died on the spot. Powell emphasized, "Look it up yourself. It's real." To him, it was proof of the negligence that so often fell on those with the least voice, black performers. From all these experiences, Powell drew one lesson: no one can ride your back unless it's bent. That quote from Martin Luther King became a guiding principle for maintaining his dignity. He had been fired, isolated, blacklisted, but never bowed his head. He stated bluntly, "I don't belong to any particular movement, but I'm not a fool. I'd rather die than accept being disrespected because of my skin color." And so the second secret Powell revealed wasn't some funny behind-the-scenes moment, but a painful wound carved by an entire industry. When a man has to fight an entire system, just because of the color of his skin, not even Hollywood's spotlight can hide that harsh truth. When fame isn't enough to protect a black man in a prejudiced society, Clifton Powell steadily rose to become one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. He appeared in over 250 films and television shows, became a familiar name to audiences, won an award at the American Black Film Festival, and achieved cultural icon status through his role as Pinky in Next Friday. Yet all that fame still wasn't enough to shield him from the harsh realities of prejudice and the shocks that come with living in a racially divided society. One of the most headline-grabbing events was the 2013 civil lawsuit. A woman accused Powell of sexually assaulting her after they met through social media. Though it was not a criminal case and there was no formal conviction, the civil court found Powell liable for battery assault and emotional distress. The accuser sought $75,000 in damages, and the story quickly spread across tabloids, casting a shadow over Powell's public image. What hurt Powell the most was the way the public responded. Many didn't care about facts or evidence, they simply assumed the worst based solely on his history of playing intense villains. The very image that made Powell famous became society's unspoken judgment. His fame didn't earn him the benefit of the doubt. Instead, it made it easier for people to believe the accusation. In several public statements, Powell declared his innocence and called the case a money grab. He emphasized that he had spent his entire life working hard fighting to maintain his dignity and would never accept being dragged down by false accusations. But the harsh truth was that despite his denial, the stain from the lawsuit lingered for years. Every time his name came up in the media, the story resurfaced and his reputation never fully recovered. This experience exposed a painful paradox in American society. Fame does not protect a black man the way people assume it might. If a white celebrity is accused of something, the public often waits for an investigation or allows them the chance to explain. But for Powell, the moment the accusation surfaced, his dark skin and history of villain roles were enough for many to presume guilt. And it wasn't just the lawsuit. Powell has often spoken of being treated with disrespect despite his fame. He recalled flying first class and still being treated like someone who didn't belong there. He talked about shopping trips where store employees followed him closely as if expecting him to steal. For Powell, these were bitter reminders that while Hollywood's spotlight could put him on the big screen in real life, he was still just another black man in the eyes of many. Horrific accidents caused by on-set negligence. If the civil lawsuit showed that fame couldn't protect Clifton Powell from harsh judgment, then his behind-the-scenes experiences revealed something even colder. Not even the lives and safety of actors are always guaranteed within the machinery of the film industry. Powell personally witnessed horrifying incidents that could have been avoided if productions had followed proper safety protocols. He called it the cost of negligence. One of the most haunting stories Powell ever told happened on the set of Vampire in Brooklyn, 1995. He recalled a scene involving a black female stuntwoman who had to perform a risky jump. The first attempt went smoothly. Her family was on set, clapping and cheering with pride. But during the second jump, tragedy struck. Someone on the crew had adjusted the landing mat, a seemingly minor change, but enough to alter everything. She landed off target, slammed into a concrete wall, and died instantly in full view of her loved ones. Powell stated bluntly, "Look it up yourself. It's real." This wasn't just a personal trauma, it was an accusation against the way productions can disregard human life in the race to meet deadlines. Powell himself has also faced negligence firsthand. On the set of a television show, he had a heated confrontation with a sound technician who insisted on threading a microphone wire through his hair while he was fully in character. Powell refused, explaining that the upcoming scene required him to roll on the ground. The technician coldly replied, "What did I just say to you?" A tense argument followed, and Powell declared he would walk off the production and pay his own way out. Eventually, the crew was forced to comply, adjusting the working conditions to meet SAG Screen Actors Guild standards. But the price Powell paid was a week of isolation. No one on the set spoke to him. According to Powell, incidents like this are not rare in Hollywood. When budgets are cut or production timelines are tight, safety steps are often skipped in the name of efficiency. For lead actors, the risk is already high. But for supporting actors and stunt performers, most of whom are people of color, the stakes are even higher. They have less voice, less protection, and when accidents happen, the industry often hides the truth under layers of PR polish. Powell stressed that these incidents aren't just occupational hazards. They reflect a dangerous mindset, treating actors as disposable tools rather than living human beings. He spoke of scenes involving prop guns that no one checked carefully, high falls, cushioned only by thin pads, or explosive sequences, staged with barely adequate safety setups. "We have to pray before jumping into these scenes. he admitted bitterly. These accidents also left a lasting mark on Powell's sense of justice. He firmly believed that if the victim in Vampire in Brooklyn had been a white stuntwoman, the incident would have been handled with far more transparency, and the industry would have been forced to change immediately. But since the person who died was an unknown black woman, the tragedy became nothing more than a faint backstage footnote quickly forgotten. That's why Powell has repeatedly stated he would rather stand up and be kicked off a production than stay silent and accept the unacceptable. To him, protecting dignity also means protecting life, not just for himself, but for the many colleagues who have even less of a voice. These experiences have made Powell one of the few actors willing to speak out publicly against on-set negligence, even at the risk of being blacklisted from major projects. Turning down money to protect community values. In an industry where opportunities often go hand in hand with money, many actors choose silence or turn a blind eye just to land a role. But Clifton Powell chose a different path. He would rather walk away from a lucrative paycheck than contribute to the distorted portrayal of the black community that he had always worked to protect. Powell once admitted that scripts with very attractive paychecks had landed on his desk, but their content made them impossible for him to accept. On one occasion, he was offered the role of a gay black crime boss, a character designed to be shocking and laughable, heavily steeped in stereotypes. Powell said bluntly, that role did nothing but further damage the image of black men in the public eye. He turned it down, even though the paycheck could have supported his entire family for years. Another project involved playing Wayne Perry, a notorious hitman from Washington, D.C., whose crimes shook the city during the 1980s and 1990s. Powell, having been born and raised in D.C., knew firsthand that Perry's name still brought real pain to many families in his hometown. I don't want to turn that tragedy into entertainment, he explained. For him, accepting the role would have meant betraying the very community that raised him. So again, he said no. These decisions were not always met with understanding. In such a fiercely competitive environment, some of Powell's peers considered him foolish for passing up rare opportunities. But to him, community values were more important than any number on a contract. He believed that actors have the power to shape how society views a group of people, and if a role only reinforced harmful stereotypes, then saying no was the responsible choice. Powell once declared, "I'd rather walk off a set rather be left out than betray myself and the community I represent." That statement reflected the unwavering principle that ran through his entire career, a career built not just on talent, but on deeply ethical decisions. To audiences, this may be a lesser-known detail, but to those who truly know Powell, it's what sets him apart. He never chased fame at all costs. Instead, he wanted to leave behind a legacy rooted in dignity and respect. That's why this story of turning down money to protect community values isn't just another behind-the-scenes anecdote. It's proof that Clifton Powell is more than just an actor. He's someone who dared to place honor and his people above personal gain. Clifton Powell's journey is proof that behind Hollywood's glamour lies an unbelievable darkness. Clifton Powell's journey is undeniable proof that behind Hollywood's glitz and glamour, there are dark corners few are willing to acknowledge. From the role of Pinky, nearly going to someone else, to the times he was rejected simply because of his skin color from tragic on-set accidents, to the opportunities he firmly turned down in order to protect his community's dignity, his story reveals a man who didn't just live by his craft, but by his principles. Now in his 60s, Powell has nothing left to prove to the world. But what he has shared stands as a powerful warning to all fame can be stripped away. Opportunities can disappear, but dignity and freedom are untouchable as long as you have the courage to protect them. And that is what makes Clifton Powell a truly unforgettable figure. Not because he played Pinky, not because he's appeared in hundreds of films, but because he's someone who dared to tell the truth and live it. If these revelations and stories beyond the spotlight have made you reflect, leave a comment to share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we can continue uncovering untold secrets of Hollywood and the people who helped shape its legacy.